Uh, okay, so I'm starting here with my session today. So a very, I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. A very good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to the session three of computer networking. Myself, Professor Vinita, faculty of INFT department, is welcoming you all for this third day session and the last day session on computer networking. Of course, computer networking is not a small domain in which I could just train you in 3 days. It requires a very hard work and dedication is required to study this subject and to getting into this subject. But keeping in mind that every one of you are already aware of the basic concepts that you have studied during your semester and that I have refreshed for every one of you in these 2 days, I guess that much is sufficient for you people to prepare for your placement activities. So, without delaying any further time, I would like to just continue with my session to the point where we had stopped our discussion yesterday. So in the last two sessions, basically, what I had tried to put in front of everyone was like what are the importance of this domain, how to get into this domain, the various certifications that are required for this domain, what technical skills are required as as a fresher for any student to getting into the industry. So there are some requirements, of course, if you want to get in here. So that I had discussed very thoroughly with everyone. Apart from that, I have not directly started with what is networking or what are the definitions. Of course, we have a lot of repository on the internet if I'm searching for some uh, particular topic. But understanding that topic is very important, and that's what was my motive for this entire 3 days. So that you do not need to study and again go back to the books and understand before you're going for any technical interviews or technical sessions. So keeping in mind, I have tried to explain you all about what particular things is networking, where networking plays a very important role, how networking is involved in our day-to-day activities or life, like each and everything that I'm doing right now. Right now, I'm delivering my lecture using this online platform or the stream. So this is again nothing but what comes as in networking. Many of you are live and you're listening to the lectures. Many of you are maybe watching the videos later on. So this all things is possible because of networking, right? You are maybe now connected on so many social media websites. Like for example, you're connected on Facebook. You're watching Instagram Reels. You're sending some messages to some other friend or person using some social websites. You're doing so many different things. You must be mailing some particular mail to some person. You know, you must be working as an IT engineer, or you must be working on an internship. You're doing so many different things. And if I'm not wrong, right now, every one of us is connected using this internet services, right? So even if there is no power and my router is off, I'll not be able to, continue my work, right? If I'm delivering my lecture and if suddenly there is some technical glitches if I found in my network, I don't have a proper network connectivity, then probably I'll not be able to deliver my lecture. So after all these things, one point I just come and stay back is I need to have a proper network connectivity in today's pandemic situation the most. If you can see, even the LKG classes, the junior classes, to the medical profession, everything is going online now. So when it's online mode, of course, I need to have to be connected to the internet services. So if you can see, the number of users have increased tremendously in these 2 years, in these two down the line 2 years due to this pandemic situation and due to the overall current scenario of the education industry. So, in this, keeping these things in mind, अगर users बढ़ रहे हैं, then there are many different things also happening. On the other part of the coin, if you see, there are so many attacks that have been taken place on the systems because there are many users who might not be aware of the breaches that can happen in the internet, right? You are just entering your credentials. Now if there is some person who has not done these things priorly, it becomes very difficult for that person to understand how to follow or how to make sure that he or she are entering their credentials in a secure website. Why can't it be a phished website, right? It can be a phished website that I have sent to you using some particular means. So now, if there is some person who is not aware of this particular method, so means he or she would probably end up on clicking that particular link and entering their credentials or giving some important information on that particular link. So that's quite dangerous in these 2 years. So if you can just go through the browser and check the graphical representation of how many attacks have been taken place in these 2 years, you can understand like how many still we have a large, what I can say, or a very wide set of researchers or students or professionals who are working on it, who should work on networking, right? So today's my overall concept or today's my overall session. I'll not be delivering something very much relevant to the theoretical concepts. Let us have a fair discussion. I'll have on some protocols that are widely used, why they are used, and after that, I'll be discussing with you how security is important in networks because it is like the future part or the future process of this subject or this domain is a student can select the career mode as in cyber security expert or a network security expert or an ethical hacker or any other role that the person fits in. So here we are going to discuss what can be the future prospect of this domain and how this domain plays a role over there. So you just need to have a basic idea, and then you can move towards the security prospect of this particular domain. So that will be my overall motive for the session today. So if you see, we have discussed already introduction to the domain. I've given a very fair introduction. I have discussed main concepts in networking, right? I have discussed about nodes, links, basic concepts in networking, like what is a network and what is not a network. What appears to you on the front end is not a network, but what makes that front end to appear in front of you is network. Please understand the difference. So that I have discussed very carefully and thoroughly. What are the standard models, like the hierarchy structure? I had discussed that two models basically. One was OSI and one was TCP/IP model, the two standard models in networking. So we have discussed these two standard models in networking. Entire application, what are the differences in these applications or in these two models, which application is most widely used, that we have discussed. Like if I want to just understand, I go for OSI. It's a very theoretical model, but when it goes for practical implementation, I told you that we go for TCP/IP, right? So this thing should be very much clear in mind for every one of you. And then after that, also we discussed about the working of networking devices. Now, when it comes to networks, of course, there will be a fixed question rather, like what are the different networking devices you can identify around yourself right now. So if you're sitting at your home, at your office, at any some X location, and if you're connected, like let me say it's a router, or let me say there is some port which is getting you connected, like there can be some component in your mobile which is getting connected you to the to the internet services, to the globe, to the www world. So basically, when I come to networking, it is most of the times it is working on these networking devices. So networking devices are found till which layer, why it is like we are adding particular device at a particular layer, that all things we have already discussed. Like why do we add routers at the network layer? Because it takes care of the IP addresses. Why we do have switches in the data link layer? Because it takes care of the MAC addresses. Why do we have repeaters at the physical layer? Because it takes care that my signal strength is increased before it reaches to the destination. Else, probably what would happen is my signal might get lost somewhere in between the source and the destination due to the weak signal capacity or to the various attenuation factors that are there in the free space or open space through which you're sending your signals. There can be some disturbances in your cabling part because of which your signal might get lost or it can get attenuated. So what I want is I should be very much reliable, that my signal should be very much, my system should be very much reliable, that before it reaches to the destination, it has to make sure that I have to make sure that the strength of my signal has been increased or at least it's maintained as much as it is required. Okay, as much as a signal is required, that much strength should be there for my signal to travel. So for all these things, I need some particular devices. Like if you remember basic electronics point, if I go, it's basically, let me say, amplifier. But because I'm dealing with digital signals, it's basically, let me say, what you can say, my repeaters, right? I can use switches or I can use bridges, I can use routers, and at the higher layers, sometime maybe that the source is working on some different protocol and the destination is working on the different protocol. So here, what I have to do is I have to I have to convert their languages. So these were all the functions that you had studied that we need to, convert the languages in whichever it's understandable. I gave you a very simple example. Like, let me say I'm talking in some different language, let me say Kannada or Tamil or Malayalam, and you are speaking in Marathi or Hindi or English, and we are not able to understand what we both are talking with each other, then that would make no sense for wasting our time. So it would be better if I would hire someone who would translate my language into the part that can be understood by you, and your whatever you answering me in the my language that I can understand, right? So there is a role for the person who can translate the things. So similarly, when in networks I come, there can be a chance, there can be a probability wherein I cannot understand the language the source machine is sending me. So sometimes to do all this sort of convergence, I need a gateway. So gateway is usually implemented at the higher layers and not at the lower layers. So gateway is not any different device that you can see. It's basically what we can say. It's basically involved as a software in a hardware device. Sorry for the disturbance. So these are all things that we had discussed on day one and day two. Yesterday, I also discussed about the TCP/IP model, the practical model that we are using in networking. Then I also discussed some networking commands. For example, very basic commands I discussed with everyone, like let me say a ping command, or let me say a netstat command, or a traceroute command, or a telnet command. So, as I said in the very first session, that Linux you have to understand if you want to get into the industry for networking. And Linux बहुत सारा कुछ हम लोग commands पे कर सकते हैं. So understanding the networking commands for the networking industry is very important. Like in a simple command, you can avail a lot of information. So which that command is, when to use that command, that are things are very important. So I discussed some very few basic important commands. Even if the interviewer is asking you, he or she will probably ask you like, I want to understand the packet that I have sent is being traveling at which locations, at which routers. It is taking a halt at which routers. Please give me the analyst report of that. So at that time, which command are you going to use? right? Which command are you going to use? So in all such scenarios, the commands that you need that I have discussed yesterday, for example, the case just I discussed, we use a trace route command. It's nothing but a simple command called as trace route. So what this trace route will do? So trace route is basically, it is nothing but a command which will give you the, like if you're saying trace route google.com, so what will happen in this particular command is, from my IP address from my machine to this Google server, to reach my packet, to reach this Google server, which all locations or servers or routers it has reached, it will give me a list of the complete steps, like which, at which particular time, which timestamp my packet was at which router, when did it left, where did it go to the next router, and so on. So I get a complete report of the route that my packet has followed to reach to the destination point and then get back to me, right? So like this, there were different commands I discussed. I also discussed about telnet command, which is nothing but a telephone network command. So when do we use this telnet commands that we'll discuss? So I discussed some basic networking commands. The very basic and very important one we discussed was the ping command. Like, why do you ping? If you want to know that whether you're connected to that server or no, you can use just a ping command. Ping command at just fraction of second, at a very immediate second, it will give you the information that whether you are connected to that particular server, or there is some discrepancy because of which you are not able to get connected to that particular destination server or host or whatever it is. So when you want to analyze or troubleshoot your status, like why you're not getting the connectivity, you can of course use the ping command. Apart from this, we have commands called as ipconfig, that stands for IP configuration, ifconfig. Both instructions are same, only the difference is about the OS. Like if you're using it in Windows and if you're using it in the Linux, the command changes from IP to IF. So here, when do we use these commands? In a network, at one point, it may ask you to enter the IP address of your machine. Now, of course, I do not recollect the IP address of my machine. So how will you immediately get your IP address? Is by following, just open your command prompt and you can just type a command called as IP or ifconfig, whichever operating system you're working on, and you will get your machine's IP address, MAC address, and all the other details that are required. Like even you can get your IPv6 address, many different addresses will be there. If you want, you can just do it and then you can find out. So like this, there are many networking commands. Of course, these are not limited to. There are many networking commands. So here we discussed yesterday about some basic networking commands, and we discussed about the numericals in networking. I discussed many numericals that act as in flowchart or that acts as an algorithm in the industries. Like आपको pen paper पे नहीं करना है, but what they do ask you is that they will tell you that there is a packet that we want to run. So you tell me, you write an algorithm for this, wherein it will calculate the shortest path automatically and then it will send the data. Okay, or you write an algorithm wherein it should identify that whether the connection is from a remote server or a local server, and if the connection is from this bunch of servers, then only you give them the connection, and don't give them this connection. So all these things what you see, those act as an algorithm, and that you have to write in the form of a Java, JavaScript, C++, Python, whichever language your industry wants you to write in, you have to just write. But the overall concept will remain the same. That is, what you have to do is you have to write the code. So that algorithms I discussed, like what are the algorithms? Of course, that cannot be done in a very short time. But if you have any queries, I have left my email ID, so you can get back to me on that email ID. Then also I discussed after that at the very end session, I discussed about examples of network designing. So basically, if you can recollect, I had told you some tools that we are using to understand and study the networking concepts. Like if I want to design any projects or if I want to work on an smart systems like smart homes, smart offices, smart buildings, or something like that. So then also it's possible. So which tools you can use that are readily available on the platform is in a open source that are discussed for three tools. That is, you can go for Cisco packets, or you can go for GNS3, or you can go for carbon tools. So there are different tools that you can use to study and analyze these networking concepts. Apart from that, I had also told that because security comes in the picture, you need to also work on Wireshark tool. Wireshark is actually a network analyzer tool. So it identifies like what is happening at what point of time, where the packet is living, which protocol it is running, what is the timestamp, where it has been received, like what was the destination node, source node कौन था, उसका IP address क्या था, उसका MAC address क्या था, because at some point, if you want to perform a reverse step and if you want to get back to the source who had sent some particular message which was not intended to be sent, then you go for using such tools called as Wireshark tools. So Wireshark क्या है? एक basically network analyzer tool है, which you can use to analyze the complete working functions of your systems. So this was what we discussed yesterday. So the topics that I'm going to discuss today is about the various protocols that we are using in networking. To make it more crisp, I'm going to talk on the protocols in very short that are used in the application layer. Why? That also I'll tell you. And I'll give you some introduction to network security. Like if any student insists to work on cyber security or ethical hacker or ethical experts, ethical network experts or network security engineers, for them this will be a really good thing to be here. Apart from this, I'll tell you the tool that you have to practice if you want to get in into the networking security domain. And then finally, I'll give you a bunch of technical questions and I'll have a discussion on the expected questions that will be asked in the interview panels. Okay. So coming to my first point for the today, that is the various protocols that are used. Now here, if you can see, I have not differentiated between the protocols that are used in the application layer or in the network layer, क्योंकि आपका जो पूरा networking है वो protocol पे ही built है, right? आपका पूरा networking जो है वो protocols पे built है. Protocols is nothing but some rules that they have to follow to send the data from one point to another. So they have to follow, it's the rule. So the rules is called as the protocol. So आपका जो पूरा networking है, that is completely based and designed on these protocols. But there must be some protocols which are working as a very integral part of a networking. Like अगर आप एक आध protocol नहीं use करोगे, then that would be fine. But there can be some other protocols also without which your data will not get transmitted from one point to another point. So just let us have thoroughly a discussion, or let me just tell you some basic or very important, rather I would say, protocols that we are using in networking. Okay. Now starting with the protocols, see, if you remember, I had told the topmost layer in any model, like let me say even in the OSI, or let me say even in the TCP/IP, the topmost layer that the user interacts, okay, जो user interact करता है वो होता है अपना application layer. Now here the question would be, why isn't the physical layer? Because I say the physical layer as the first layer and the application layer as the seventh layer in the OSI model. But मेरा user जो है वो कौन से layers के साथ interact कर रहा है? It is interacting with the seventh layer, that is the application layer in the OSI model. Now how is the scenario? Okay. Now understand here, it's very simple. Let me say you are a user or a client and you are using your laptop right now and you want to access a Gmail service, okay, a Gmail mailing service. So what you do is you go to the browser and you just write what is www.gmail.com, right? You type something like this. It's not Gmail, it can be any service. This is just an example. So you are writing something on the browser. Now आपके पूरे OSI मॉडल को क्या क्या जानना है? Like it has to understand at what IP this particular server is hosted on. You should understand what is the IP address of the user machine. It has to understand what is this G, what is this M, what is this A. It has to understand what is this .com, because I don't understand any of these things literally. Okay, the system will never understand any of these things at a first glance. So now when my user is entering something, and now जब मुझे यहाँ पे processing start करना है, right? I have to first understand what the user is asking from me, right? Now, what the user is asking from me is it is asking a mailing service. It wants that Gmail service to pop up on his or her screen so that they can send the mails. So they are requesting some type of service. तो वो service कौन सा है? वो service एक mailing service है. Now, when it comes to mailing, it cannot be like I can use some any other user's mailbox and just send it to anything. No, it's of course one to one, point to point. Of course, I can send it to multiple, but वो मेरे ही credentials से होना चाहिए. That means what? I am asking for a secured connection to use the mailing services. See the constraints that is there now. I am requesting a secured connection so that I can avail the mailing services that are available. तो अभी ये किससे who has got this responsibility is the application layer. अब application layer क्या कर रहा है? वो user के साथ first step पे interact कर रहा है. तो application layer की responsibility क्या है? That you understand what the user wants to do. यूजर को एक सिक्योर चाहिए, अनसिक्योर्ड चाहिए, यूजर को कौन सा वेबसाइट एक्सेस करना है. You first take all the requirements from the client. If you have seen, if you have worked as an intern or anything somewhere, you must have seen that the company asks for the requirements from the clients first. So the same scenario is here. Ask for the requirements. What is my requirement? I want to avail a secured connection to avail the mailing services. ये मेरा client का request है. तो अभी ये request को process करना, to work on this process, I have to start understanding the rules. What is the rule? That I need a secured connection, and what I need is I need to use a mailing service. I need to use what? A mailing service. So these are two basic requirements what my client is giving. So secured के लिए it says me okay, you will be getting a TCP. Mailing service के लिए okay, you will be using an SMTP protocol. TCP means you will be using an HTTPS protocol, और आप SMTP को use करोगे mail करने के लिए. So that means what? I'll give you my application layer will say that this client will go on HTTPS protocol and you will work on SMTP protocol. SMTP का protocol का functioning पूरा अलग होता है. FTP is working on a different set of rules. ARP is working on a different set of rules. DNS is working differently. सबका अपना अपना अलग अलग काम होता है. So आपका जो requirement है उसके हिसाब से मैं काम करता हूँ. So this is what the application here has to first deal with. So then what are the various, what you can say, what are the various protocols that I'm broadly studying in network? See, when I'm coming to application layer, there are numerous protocols. Say, I can say, if you can recollect, I had told that whenever you're entering anything, my system will not understand. The first responsibility is to identify at which IP this website is hosted on, right? Or this domain, IP address of that domain. I have to find out its actual address. So what is my responsibility is I don't understand this G, M, A, dot. I don't understand anything of this. So what I have to do is I understand only in the form of IP address. That is, it is a binary notation IP addresses. So it's basically something like this. Anything, it can go from 0.0.0.0 to 255.255.255.0. इसके बीच में जो भी IP एड्रेस पे आपका वेबसाइट असाइंड होता है, so what you have to do is your application layer should first connect with that IP address. So whose role it is now? This is a different task, right? Like you have to convert, you have to identify the domain, and then you have to map its IP address, and then you have to send that packet over that IP address. So here this is a complete different set of functions. So here I'm going to use a protocol called as DNS, which stands for domain name system or a domain name service. Okay. So what DNS will do is first it creates, like, let me say, just a database type of structure wherein it has created the different tree branches, like let me say it's .com, it's .edu, it's .in, right? It's .org and something like that. So first, whenever you enter here www.xyg.org, so the packet will be automatically routed where? To this org branch. Now org में अपना खुद का एक database होता है where you are saying like abc.org, उसका IP address, def.org, उसका IP address, wherever it is hosted, xyz.org, उसका IP address. So all these are mapped. So when it comes to org and when it says XYZ, so it says XYZ is mapped to this IP. So this is the IP that the user wants to get connected to. So this is a complete different set of responsibility. So that responsibility is taken by a protocol called as DNS protocol, which stands for domain name system. I of course have in video that I'll show, that will be having a better understanding of how the system works like. Apart from that, I have HTTP and HTTPS, which are called as the browsing protocols. Now, what do you mean? Every one of you must be having an idea that this additional S stands for the secured connections. Like if you are requesting, if any website is saying that I'm secured, then it indicates it using the browser as HTTPS. And if any website is saying that this is not a secured website, this should probably not have this S. And if you can see here before this HTTP S, you will find a lock screen. So this lock screen indicates what? That this is a secure website. तो secure website पे आप जब भी use करते हो, so it is basically SSL, SSH, TCL scripted होते हैं. You have that certifications available which says that your website is secure. Now, being in third year, if you have done any projects and if you have hosted your websites live, so you must have seen that many domains, they give you this free certification so that your website remains in the safer part. Like no one will be able to hack or phish or clone your network, clone your website and represent it as their website or their work, or they will not be able to, breach any particular user. So any domains where you're hosting your websites, if you see, they are additionally giving you, directly giving you for 1 month, 2 month, 3 months, that this SSL or SSH certification is free, so that your website is in the secured mode of operating, right? So when I'm saying it's HTTP, it's basically working on the UDP protocol, and when I'm saying HTTPS, it's basically working on the TCP protocol. Okay. Apart from this, where I'm using this protocols, like let me say any website you go, any IP address, anything you want to type on the browser, you start it with the HTTP or HTTPS. These are basically called as the browsing protocols. It's hypertext transfer protocol, which is used for browsing mechanisms. Next comes is the SMTP protocol, which is again a very important protocol. As I've already told, SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So what do we mean that simple mail transfer protocol is basically you are going to send a mail or something like this. So at that time you need to use, or your application will be diverted on the SMTP, that is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So this SMTP will take care that your mail, whatever you have typed, it identifies the to address, it identifies the CC, it identifies the body of your message, and everything, and it leaves your proper server. Like if you're sending it to a Gmail server, this SMTP makes sure that the Gmail server has this data, and then this Gmail server will identify that whether the receiver end from this to address, it will identify that whether this receiver end is its own server or is it some different server, for let me say whether it is an Outlook server, or let me say whether it is an Yahoo server or any other server where you want to send the message. So here when it comes over here, so here let me say it's in the same Gmail server. So it sends the message to this Gmail server. Now this Gmail server will identify where this particular user is, and then the message will be redirected to that user location. So here SMTP will not work alone. SMTP will work along with a protocol called SPOP, that is Post Office Protocol. So post office is for the general internal this thing. I'm using SMTP, and when I'm saying it's basically like delivering your postal card, right? Mail is nothing but a postal card. So when I'm going from one server, one city to another city, I'm using the protocol called SPOP, that stands for Post Office Protocol. So SMTP works along with Post Office Protocol. After that, I have a Telnet. Telnet, as I said, it stands for telephone network. So telephone network, as I've already told, that it is basically used where I want to just check the connections with any particular remote server or a remote host, and I want to get connected to that particular server or the host. So then I'm just using Telnet. Telnet, the full form of Telnet is telephone networks. So what you can do is you can just go to the command from, see, in networking practice will make you perfect. So just go to your CMD, and then what you can do is just write a command as telnet, and whichever IP address or the website which you want or server name, whatever you have, you can just type it. Then it will tell you whether the connection is successful or it's not. If your connection is successful, you will be redirected to that server, or if the connection is unsuccessful, it will give you that prompt message that your connection is unsuccessful, so you will not be connected to that remote server or remote host. So this is where we are using telnet commands basically. FTP is again a very widely used protocol that is used in a very small scale organizations. For example, let me say I have a very small industry running, in which, let me say, I have 10 employees working under me. So what I'll do is I don't want to have a different repositories. So what I'll do is one system, one server I'll dedicate as an FTP server. So what it will do is, in this FTP server, I'm going to keep my entire data, my files, whatever I wish to, and I give its credentials. I create a credentials for my FTP server if you want to get in into the server. So what the user has to do is he has to remote login into that wherever the client is. He has to remote login into that particular server IP address and enter the credentials. As soon as the credentials are authenticated, what the user can do is he can upload, download, view whatever files are there on the main server, and he or she can access the files. Here again, there is very important thing that the owner of that particular server can decide whether the employees or the clients are allowed to take any actions on the files, or else the question can be like, if someone breaches your data and automatically deletes your data, then this is going to be again a breach. So yes, of course. So here the owner can take an action, like whether he can decide whether that particular remote clients, they are allowed to read or write or delete or update or whatever commands are there or instructions are there. Else, if you want the clients to only download a copy, you can just give them the read option and not the write option. So read command, write command. So these are the commands that if you give the authority of read and write, so one employee will be able to even delete and add and update or do anything. But if you're just giving a read authority to a client, so basically they will not be able to delete or make any changes to your existing files. So that is one very important things that you have to keep in mind when we are creating FTP servers. Creation of FTP servers is very simple. You can find many tutorials available on YouTube or on different platforms. So there are many videos available for the same. Apart from this, as I told, that we are using ICMP protocol, we are using ARP protocol. So ICMP, ARP, these are working in my network layer protocols. Okay, and when I'm coming to transport layer, I'm using the TCP protocol, or I'm using the UDP protocol, and all the protocols which I've mentioned below, right from HTTP to FTP, they are all mentioned in the application layer. So there are many numerous applications and numerous protocols that have been implemented and that have been using in the application layer. So you have to be very careful and understand what services are required and what protocol it has to be done. Now again the main question is कि ये सब कौन करता है? ये manually तो नहीं होता होगा ना? Of course नहीं, ये manually कुछ नहीं होता है. Everything is pre-designed in the networking model. So based on the requirements, the socket switching pattern happens. Like sometimes you're switching immediately to HTTP protocol, and sometimes you immediately switch to HTTPS protocol. So here the system is going to decide like whether I need to switch you from HTTP to HTTPS or from HTTPS to HTTP. So you need not do anything manually, everything happens internally. But of course, these are the very favorite questions of any user. So if you could explain in such a way to the interviewer or the technical person who is hiring you, you are in. Okay. So these were the main protocols that we have in the application layer. So whatever I've told, I have just tried to put it up over here if you can see. So this is basically a domain name system, which I find is the very first, very important functionality of the application layer. So, sorry. So suppose the FTP site is at EduSoft and there's an IP address. So people would not recollect this IP address, but what they would recollect is EduSoft name. So then who is going to take the responsibility of mapping this EduSoft to this IP is your DNS protocol. So when I'm saying that I have all this Amazon, Myntra, Nika, or any other xyz.com website, so these are just what the names of that particular website. So they are floated, they are posted on some particular IP address, right? So this is basically what you can say a smaller video which I would like to show later on how DNS works. Then this is the next protocol that I had discussed, that is FTP. So if you can see a very simple diagram I have used here. So FTP is basically a user who wants to get connected or who wants to share. So it has its own user interface, control process. Control process means what controls the user has, then the data transfer process continues. So in the server side, it's just control process. So it checks like whether whatever service you're requesting for, that services are there for you or not. Like let me say, if you want to say, I want to upload a document, is this service available to you? Is this control with you? If you're saying I want to delete this, is that service available to you? So all that things will be checked. And FTP is working on different ports. Okay, every protocol is working on a set of protocol port numbers, right? They are working on the port number. So what this port numbers means? Port number says that on what connection, like HTTP 8 अगर आपने सुना होगा, so HTTP 8 says that, oh sorry, when it is on 80, it says that it is an HTTP protocol. So similarly, आपका जो FTP होता है, it is working on port number 20 and port number 21. So when you are going for the interviews, please remember that you need to recollect this port numbers, or you need to remember the port numbers on which these protocols are built up. So as I said, HTTP is working on your 80 port. वैसे ही आपका FTP जो है, it is working on this port number 21 and 22. So why two protocols? As I said, protocols two here. One is to check the control, like to get in the connection, and second is, that is the port number second, is basically used for the data transfer connection. तो आप जब ये initiate करते हो data, it is working on port number 20 यहाँ पे, and आपका actual data connection होता है on port number 21. So here you are not going to say that this is an FTP or Telnet. Seeing what is the port number, the application layer will automatically understand what protocol your network is working on, right? So this is a simple mail transfer protocol. I have just tried to brief it with an images and not with some theoretical slides over here. If you can see, there are two users who want to, have a mailing service between client and server. Now, what happens exactly is user A, that is the client, okay? User A, that is the client, he wants to send a mail. So there is, he goes through first part that is called as user agent, and then there is called as the MTA agent, okay? Mail transfer agent basically, and these are acting as the client side. So what happens is similarly in the user side, you have user agent and mail transfer agent. So here what happens in the internet is the user sends over relays over particular things, and there is a gateway here. So here if you see from here to here, it is using an SMTP protocol, and from here to here, it is using a POP protocol, that is post office protocol. So simple mail, that is SMTP protocol. Then finally coming to the next protocol, that is an HTTP. If you remember, I had told that your application layer works completely on client server architecture. So client server is nothing but what? Request response model. So whenever a client is making any particular type of request, it is called as a request message. And when the server is giving a response back, an acknowledgement back, whether it's a positive or whether it is a negative acknowledgement, any type of acknowledgement message, it is called as a response message. So your HTTP जो है वो पूरा आपका client and server पे built होता है, which is nothing but a request response model. So if the interviewer asks you what is a request response model, you can basically simply say that it is the client server paradigm that has been followed. Okay. So these are all the applications of your protocols that we have in your application layer. Of course, it's not limited to. You can still elaborate and you can still read. There are numerous different protocols that are. There is a bunch or a bag of protocols in the application layer. But I guess if you know this main working protocols, it's sufficient. Of course, as you get into the industry, you can have more knowledge on these particular things, like which protocols they're actually using, when they are using. ये आप जैसे काम करना start करोगे वैसे ही आपको ये सारी चीजें समझ में आएगी. Okay. Now I would go to the next very different topic related with network is the network security. So security is playing a very important or a vital role in the industries. I'm pretty sure every one of you must be knowing this, right? Security is playing a very vital role. Now, why security is playing a very vital role? Because see, if you can see, I have told many a times in these 3 days that there are a lot of security breaches that is happening on the users. That means what some users have lost their money, have lost their basic private details or personal information on this internet services or on this internet platform, and so many different things is happening. So why these things are happening? Because my network is not tightly secured, or my network is not properly secured, or what you can say, it has not been covered with so many proper scripting that anyone can just find out any breach and they can attack my data, right? So here understanding the security part in the network plays a very important role. So you have the basic knowledge of networking, you are doing some 2 or 3 certifications, then you are finally into it, right? So you need to know just what security knowledge is required if you want to get into the industry of networking. So I would just like to tell what are the security job opportunities you have in the industry. So you can just first go in as a network security engineer. So when I'm saying that it's a network security engineer, their main responsibilities would include maintaining the systems, identifying the vulnerabilities. You as an employee, as a part of that company, you have to identify the vulnerabilities in their applications, and you have to automate this entire things. Like if there is any vulnerability, you have to reduce or mitigate that vulnerability. You have to also oversee the maintenance of firewalls. Every industry, if you know, they are having their own firewalls and everything for the security purpose. So routers, switches, जो भी networking devices वो लोग use कर रहे हैं या firewalls जो use कर रहे हैं, if they are using VPNs, that is virtual private network, so all that things you have to have a proper maintenance. You can also get in as a cyber security analyst. So that particular person or the student who is getting in as a cyber security analyst will be conducting various testings. Like yesterday I said you, they themselves will give you their own application to be breached. Okay. So when you are saying that you are going to work as in cyber security analyst, so what they will do is they will give you, yeah, they will give you their own website, and they will ask you to perform the penetration testing करके दिखाओ. Penetration testing का मतलब क्या होता है? That you yourself attack your system. क्यों अटैक करने को बोलते हैं आपको सिस्टम को? So that if you can attack, so any other hacker can attack, right? So if it's successful for you, it's successful for any other person. So what they want to do is before they float their applications into the market, they want it has to be tightly secure. So उसके लिए they hire cyber security analyst students, and again repeating that maybe you might not get on campus these particular positions or opportunities, but being in third year or final year, you can start trying and applying for the cyber security. Believe me, in 1 year you will be in any good industry, and the roles and the tasks that will be assigned to you at the starting level or the fresher level is very simple. That is, you have to continuously monitor the networks, you have to continuously perform penetration testing methods, and so many different things you have to do. So but all the tutorials are available, and entire thing is available on the internet, and also you can get back to me on that particular topics. Okay. And security assessments, okay, and managing the network. Apart from this, what are the other roles that you can have is you can act as a security architect. That means you will be the one who will be responsible to design the security of your system. मतलब VPN बनाना है, उसमें codes कैसे डालना है आपको VPN को, it should be working on which algorithm that codes will be generated, which type of firewalls you are going to use, and so many different things you will be doing. So basically, you will be the one who will be designing the architect, security architect for your organization. And the very important role in any industry, like they will give you one case study, because I have attended a few interviews, I can just tell you. They will give you one case study, wherein the case study is they'll give you a real life scenario. So the scenario is, let me say there is a person who has, who is not aware of using debit cards or credit cards. And now what they have done is, if he has done some shopping on in some particular shop or an online source or online platform. So now what has happened is, that transaction was right, it was successful, but later on there are additional 5 transactions done using the same card. The card was with the person itself, it was not with any other person, but the transactions has happened and that the person has launched a complaint now. So this is in cyber breach that is happening. तो ये पूरा नेटवर्किंग के बेस्ड है, तो आपको सॉल्यूशन देना पड़ेगा that how will you find out how that particular attack has taken place, and how you can get back to that particular person who has done this particular type of attacks, or who has tried to perform this unethical action on any another user. So the interviews basically in this particular security job opportunities for engineers will be basically very simple, no coding, nothing. They are just going to give you a scenario and you have to explain your point of view, and using that answer they will identify like how much technically skillful you are in this particular domain. Apart from this, you have to perform regular checks on the servers. आपके सर्वर पे कोई अटैक तो नहीं हो रहा है, आपके सर्वर में अनवांटेड टाइम पे कोई डेटा लीक तो नहीं हो रहा है. All these things you have to take care, and you have to see that the patching for your organization is done very carefully. Patching means there should be no loopholes in the security system. Certifications ये वो सब proper होने चाहिए. So all these things will be there. At a fresher level, you will be asked to do some type of penetration testing, pen test वगैरह करनी बोलते हैं. And as you go on increasing, like after 1 year down the line, they will start taking you in the key roles, because this cyber roles is very important in many industries. I hope I'm clear. For any queries, you can get back to me. So what is network security? Of course, these things you can also search on the browser, and you can also start applying offline right now. There is no requirement like you wait till 8 semester or something. You can start applying, you can start doing certifications, and you will be in into any of these companies. This is my surety. After that, let me just tell you about what is network security and what things you just need to, know before you're going for this particular type of jobs. Just give me a moment. I'm just resharing my screen. Just a minute. I'm so sorry for the distance. Yeah. So I'll just give you an idea on what is network security. So network security, as I have given you a very fair idea on what they mean by network security. So network security is basically you're also going to handle the core part of your networks, and also you're going to handle if any type of breach attacks or anything is happening on your networks. Okay. So it includes both hardware and software. You have to also monitor the software part, like the architectures and everything, and also you have to monitor the hardware configuration of your industries. So it targets a variety of threats. So a very what you can say, a very fun type job it is. So you can contact any person, you can get an idea about it. Daily you will be having new tasks in your hand, like you will be, there is new type of threats that are happening and that are coming up with the analytical hacker's job. So as an ethical hacker, you have to identify these threats, and when you know that this is a threat, you have to make your application, your industry, your organization ready to mitigate this type of threats, right? So once you know the threat, you can identify a solution for that threat. So you have to stop these type of threats or attacks happening on your network or in your organization. And it is the one network security engineer is the one who manages the complete access to the network. Means who is allowed to access, who is not allowed to access. Everything rights will be decided by the security engineer. So what are the types of network security? आप कैसे security, आप कैसे secure कर सकते हो आपके networks को? मतलब आपको क्या क्या पढ़ना पड़ेगा वो बात समझ लो. You have to have a very fair idea about what do you mean by firewalls. So when the industry person is asking you, do you know what is a firewall? So you just cannot say that yes sir or yes ma'am, we know what is a firewall, and it is something which is objecting the in and out of any particular messages. That is not the right way of answering what do you know by firewalls. So you have to be technically sound when you're answering a firewall, like what type of firewalls have to be used, and you should never in networks you should never say like incoming or outgoing messages. It is always you have to form in the form of packets, right? So what is the exact role of firewalls? हम लोग firewall कहाँ पे in and out करते हैं, क्यों करते हैं, ये सब आपको technically बताना है. Coming to email security, so every internet, as I said till now, what we have discussed is about the protocols. तो उस protocols में आप security कैसे दे रहे हो? Like I'm sending a mail from my mailing box to some other mailbox. So if there is some intruder in between, some third person, and if he or she is trying to intrude your data, then they will be able to read the contents of your mail, uh, which can attack or it can have a very large impact on the privacy of your data. So that should not be there. So you should be aware of what is email security. So there are you are using, right, with your laptops and everything, you are using so many securities, right? So that is you have to answer. Antivirus and anti-malware, you have to be aware of what is a virus and a malware. Okay, virus and a malware are different things. right? So virus has to be injected. Malware injects itself. It replicates itself. It makes its clones wherever it's going. So you need to have an antivirus as well as an anti-malware software. My great recommendation would be that even in your cell phones, you need to have an antivirus software, because what happens is most of the times we are connected through our mobile phones. So it's most of the attacks also happen on the mobile phones between the age group of, let me say, 12 to 18, and let me say with the age group of 50 to or 60 to 65 or above that. These are the age groups that have been attacked the most in the network security. Okay. Then you need to know about what you mean by access control. As I said about the read command, write command, you need to be aware of all this. What type of access needs to be given? You as a network security engineer, you should be aware of all these things. You should be aware of intrusion systems, that is IDS, we basically called intrusion detection systems. You should be able to detect the intrusions, right? And you should also be able to prevent those intrusions that is happening. It's basically called as IDS and IPS, intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems. There are specialists who are working on IDS and IPS. Okay. VPNs, you should be aware of VPNs, how a VPN is created. Again, you have many tutorials on how a VPN should be created and how you should give proper access to the VPNs. Many industries, they have started providing VPN services also. Wireless security, when you are saying that I'm going to use a wireless mode of communication, so there your signals are completely open in nature. So at that time, how will you make sure that your data is not hacked by any third person party? So you have to provide the security algorithms over there. And apart from that, it's also web security. So web is the entire thing, right? So web, let me say it's my globe, that is www. तो हम लोग सब चीज वहाँ करते हैं. So when I'm saying I'm doing so many things, what is the level of security you are provided? तो यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पे सब कुछ आता है. Now it's like everything that has been coming into. Like you have to go for the certifications, you have to understand the SSH scripts, you have to understand the different types of attacks, because to the point you don't understand that how a person or how a thief is going to, switch your money, you will not be able to protect your money or your belongings. तो ये सब चीजें अगर आपको करनी है, अगर आपको एक नेटवर्क सिक्योरिटी इंजीनियर बनना है, तो फर्स्ट इज यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड और यू हैव टू गेट into the shoes of that particular thief who is going to attack you. Understand not, and what is my point is, you have to get into the shoes of first understanding ये attack होता कैसे है. Then only you will be able to find out the ways to overcome these type of attacks. तो हम लोग ये सब कैसे practice कर सकते हैं? So this is one biggest question. So yeah, this is, I'll tell you about that. So this is computer network security. So you have to maintain all these security parts. You have to go for encryption and decryption. You have to apply some cryptography methods on your data, like ciphering and everything, so that you encrypt and decrypt your data. So here the cipher text, what you are saying, it's a converted text. आप एक प्लेन टेक्स्ट आप कुछ मैसेज कर रहे हो, देन आई एम यूजिंग दम साइफर की एल्गोरिथम्स, जैसे RC4 हो गया, DES एल्गोरिथम हो गया, 3 DES एल्गोरिथम हो गया. So using these algorithms, I'm encrypting your data, and that encrypted data is called as a cipher data or cipher text. And when I'm giving it to the destination, if he wants to convert it from cipher to plain, I'm giving him a secret key. So when that user enters that secret key, then only the decryption will start happening, and then only the person will be able to recover back the plain text. Okay. Digital signatures, every one of us know what is a digital signature. Now 2 साल में तो हम लोगों ने बहुत ही ज्यादा digital signatures पे काम किया है. So it's like public and private digital signatures. So this is what is the basic structures. You don't need to explain these concepts in a very long slides or PPTs. If you could just draw it in front of the interviewer and tell, देखो ये ऐसे ऐसे होता है, then you are into this industry. Okay. So you don't need any coding knowledge or anything. Fast coding knowledge जैसी जरूरत नहीं है. As I told you, please understand and study only Linux. and you go for this particular domain, you will be in and you will get a very good post down the line. Okay. So, as my question was, or your question can be like, ma'am, how do we practice all these things? So, to practice all these things, there is one OS or one system that is Kali Linux basically. सो लिनक्स का ही वर्जन है जो हम लोग सिक्योरिटी में यूज करते हैं विच इज कॉल्ड एज काली लिनक्स. So Kali Linux is basically an operating system, okay, which is running on Unix or which is running on Linux machines. So this particular tool we are using basically to perform any type of attacks and to find out the ways to mitigate that attacks. Now there are numerous things we have done in this domain. So you have to understand and what you can say. You have to install this Kali Linux machine as a virtual system on your systems, and you can start using it. You can start practicing all the things on Kali Linux. अगर आपने काली लिनक्स यूज किया है तो आपको कुछ भी डिफिकल्टी नहीं होगी इन द इंडस्ट्रीज बिकॉज काली लिनक्स हैज गिवन सो मेनी थिंग्स लाइक यू कैन परफॉर्म द पेनिट्रेशन टेस्टिंग for the starters, for the freshers, and to the expert level, these tools are being used. जैसे Kali Linux हो गया, Parrot करके एक tool है. So Parrot is also OS that we are using for the hacking part. Okay, now I'm going into the shoes of hacking part. So not exactly unethical, but exactly what I'm talking about is an ethical hacking part. So industry sometimes needs to hack, or there are on board engineers who are working as ethical hackers or cybersecurity experts. So these are the most popular operating system. Kali Linux is the most popular operating system used by cybersecurity engineers all over the world. Right? You can just check it on the internet. They are Kali Linux is one of the best OS you can use to understand, study, and practice and use in your industries. So अगर आपको साइबर सिक्योरिटी और एथिकल हैकिंग के पार्ट में जाना है आपको काली लिनक्स आना मस्ट है. So there are numerous courses on Kali Linux, on Udemy, on different online sources, portals, where you can just register and they'll give you a very, very good hands-on experience for this. Even if you're studying in your higher semesters, any subjects related to this, you're going to learn more about this. Uh, and apart from this, if you want any type of assistance in these tools, you can of course contact me. So what I can do using this tool is you can perform any type of penetration testing. आप कोई भी टाइप के अटैक्स जैसे DOS अटैक हो गया, TDOS अटैक हो गया, आप क्लोनिंग अटैक करना चाहते हो, फिशिंग अटैक करके देखना चाहते हो, राइट? So by legal it's not allowed, but on the what you can say, there are few example websites which are meant for these things. तो आप वहाँ पे ये सब चीजें करके देख सकते हो. So this is where we are using Kali Linux. So if you want to get into the field of cybersecurity, you have to understand and work on Kali Linux or at least on Parrot OS. Right? It's Parrot operating system. Okay. So there are various attacks that you can study using Kali Linux, like how to perform a DOS attack, which basically stands for a denial of service attacks. There are attacks on web vulnerabilities, like you have a web application running. So there are so many vulnerabilities in a web. So identify these web vulnerabilities. Attacks कैसे होता है websites पे वो आप समझ सकते हो. Wireless attacks, like for example, let me say there is a student who is connected right now over here, and what I can do is I can just, for some reason, I can just ask the student to drop his or her mobile number on the screen. Okay. So once I've got the number, I have such steps in this tool that actually I can send you a message and I can represent it to you that the message is from some of your close friends. Okay. And even you in your inbox, the message will pop up with the name of your friend's name. Right? Because first I will scratch the contacts from your number, and then using any contact, I'll be able to share the message on your number, or I'll be able to fetch any photos from your gallery, or I'll be able to fetch the entire contact list of your cell phone. So ऐसे बहुत सारे attacks होते हैं जिसको आपको पहले समझना पड़ेगा कि वो होते कैसे हैं, फिर ही जाके आप उसको what you can say आप उसको mitigate कर सकते हो, right? You have database attacks that you can try and understand and do. So database attacks means what? Every industry का खुद का एक website होता ही है, right? So every website में अपना एक database होता है, like it has its own employees database, so it has its student database, so it has many other different databases, like informations बहुत सारा होता है. So if you are able to hack their database and get those results, and then आप वो data को use कर सकते हो आपके इसमें, then you will be the one who will be beneficial. So database attack can be done and is done most of the times. So इसीलिए they say that you can go for no SQL. अगर आप एक SQL database use कर रहे हो तो hacking का possibility ज़्यादा होता है. So you can go for using Firebase or you can go for using no SQL databases like that. Okay. Coming to the next attack, that is spoofing, sniffing, forensic, social engineering attacks. So social engineering में sending fake emails or cloning your websites. Many such things are happening. You can just check on the internet. There is a list of social engineering attacks that is happening. Okay, so all such attacks can be studied and can be performed using Kali Linux. Phishing attacks, and this is, of course, I cannot just list down everything. So the very famous attacks that are done that I'm trying to replicate over here. So that was all about the attacks, and this is all attacks you need to study how they are performed and come up with the mitigation steps. Because right now there was a news that one of the girl, what she has done is the Microsoft Azure, if you know the cloud platform, that girl has found out a vulnerability, and she has reported that vulnerability with the solution. हाँ, solution दिया नहीं है, solution propose करके दिया है to the Microsoft, and she has been rewarded with 20 lakhs of amount, like which dollars में after conversion it was something 20 lakhs of amount she has been credited because she was able to identify the vulnerability in their web, and she was able to report it along with the solution. So the thing is, as जितना आप ज़्यादा research करोगे, जितना ज़्यादा आप उस पर study करोगे, उतना ज़्यादा आप उसको समझ पाओगे. She first understood what is the drawback, what is the vulnerability, and then she tried to propose a solution for that. Right? So if any type of attack, like phishing attack, and now if you're saying all the banking websites, they are going for a two-step authentication. So initially कैसे होता था? It was just one-step authentication. You enter your credentials, same username, password, and then it was login. After that, we came up with more advancement. We came up by entering the captcha. Now हम लोग क्यों बोलते हैं captcha को enter करो? Because let me say, if that website is a phished website or if that website is a fake website, then वो जो captcha generate होता है ना, that it is being generated automatically from the backend of the websites, from the databases, using some algorithms. तो अगर वो एक phished website है, वो captcha generate नहीं कर पाएगा. और अगर आप captcha enter भी नहीं करोगे ना, तो भी आप login हो जाओगे. So that means what? वो captcha verification हुआ ही नहीं था. So that means what? Verification नहीं हुआ था, मतलब वो trusted source से नहीं था. So we went for using the captcha methods. Now, if you're seeing the very famous banking websites, even after entering the captcha, they will send you an OTP on your registered number, which is a second step method. This is called as a two-page authentication steps. See, one by one, after finding out the vulnerabilities, after finding the loopholes, the cybersecurity engineers, they are coming up with a solution to all these problems. Right? You can do phishing attacks. You can perform cloning attacks. Like मैं आपको बोलती हूँ कि this is your attendance. आपको fill करना है. So this is your link of your attendance, and you have to log in here and you have to give your attendance. So where the general tendency is, okay, एक link है, एक form पे एक link है. So I'll just enter my username and I'll just hit enter. As soon as I hit enter ना, आपके कौन से login ID से आपके system पे login किया था, I will get the entire repository on my systems. Why? Because that website, that link what I had sent, which was appearing to you as a trusted owner's form or a link or a client, whatever it is, web page, that was actually a cloned page. right? So there is no limitation on how much we can discuss on the security part. So if any student is really interested in going into this attacks or Linux or a network security expert or as an ethical hacker or as a cybersecurity engineer or as a network analyst, you can please go through all these recordings. You can get back to me. We can have a one-to-one discussion and I'll tell you how you have to work with this particular things. So this wasn't just very quick introduction on the networking part apart from the protocols, models, numericals, and then the network security part. So this is just what I have prepared a questionnaire for EQ and technical round questions. If you have prepared for this set of questions, this is really simple and it will be done. As in entry level, as in fresher, these will be few sets of questions that will be asked to you. So what do you mean by network? What do you mean by node? What is OS reference model? What is the difference between OS and TCP model? Difference between computer network and distributed networks. There are different types of networks actually. What do you mean by bandwidth, latency? Define the term unicasting, multicasting, broadcasting. You know, so all these things, basic questions, they will be starting as in fresher. This will be just the basics, okay? And when you have answered everything, so these are the answers you can just give, which I've tried to put up over here. So what are routers? What are the layers in the OSI models and everything? So this is you have to explain clearly. Uh, the question can be, what is the difference between the hub switch and router? So you have to explain that these are the networking devices. Later, explain TCP/IP model. So explain TCP/IP model. You have to the way I have explained it. You can just explain like what do you mean by TCP/IP model. So once you explain them with each layer, like what it is, then it will be very easy for them to uh, to understand like what is your understanding, knowledge of understanding. Questions will be on based on the protocols, like what is HTTP, and as I said, they will be asking you for the protocol numbers. जैसे आप मुझे बताओ HTTP कौन से प्रोटोकॉल पे रन होता है, SMTP कौन से प्रोटोकॉल पे रन होता है, you know. So all these things are asked. Okay. So next, what is firewall and everything will be asked. So firewall, what is firewall? So as I said, you cannot just say that this is a firewall and this is how we want to work. Then what is DNS? So you need to tell what is DNS and how DNS operates. That is what you are supposed to explain. Then what do you mean by proxy servers? Now this is again a very important question that the students will ask you, like, or the interviewer may ask you is what is a proxy server. So you should be able to tell like proxy server का मतलब क्या होता है और हम लोग proxy servers कहाँ पे use करते हैं. Then as I said, they will be asking you about the IP addresses. Like how do you identify the IP addresses? So IP addresses, you can just tell like what are the range of IP addresses and which range has to be designed or which range has to be given for which particular client, etc. Then the next question is what is NIC? NIC stands for Network Interface Card. Okay. Then what is the difference between intranet, extranet, etc. Then static and dynamic IPs, everything. So these were the set of questionnaires that I had for every one of you. At the very entry level or the basic level, these set of questionnaires are only asked. So apart from this, if you are saying you are going into the cybersecurity expert, then what you can do is you can refer more such interview questions and you have to go through some real life scenarios. You can find the video tutorials like how the questionnaires for cybersecurity engineers are asked. Okay, so that's it for this domain to be refreshed on. So of course it's a very vast domain. आप जितना ज़्यादा practice करोगे उतना ज़्यादा beneficial होगा. So that's it from my side. And this is my email ID. It's vinita Bandiwad at vit.edu.in. So in case of any queries or any assistance you need in this particular domain, you can please drop me a mail and I will be very happy to answer your questions and also help you if any one of you wants to get into the industries or if you want to perform any internship projects, you can please contact me. I have various ideas or we are working on various internship ideas for this domain. So that internship will be really helpful for you to showcase as your work when you're getting into the industry. Apart from this, if you want to have any other information about the certifications or anything, you please drop me a mail. I will surely reply you as soon as possible. Okay. That's it from my side. Thank you, Elizabeth. If you have any queries or any questions, please drop it in the chat box. Sir, I'm done from my side. If there is any questions in the chat section.
No questions in the chat section.
Okay. Sir, I'm done with my session.
Shall I close, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Vinita ma'am, shall we end?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. You can stop the presentation from your end.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing that.
Okay. Sunil sir, we can end the session.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Doing that.